Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show and welcome to another stream here as we go through another sort of event that's going on at the minute with regards to Leeds United. And I'm going to give my raw, honest opinion on something which is irking me a little bit, to be quite honest with you. But before we start the video, do us a favor, slap a like on the video, get your comments in, I should say, plural. I want everybody's comments in on the video. Let me know exactly what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? This channel is a forum. It is a forum. There's loads of people who disagree with me, loads of people who agree with me. That's the beauty of football. It's subjectivity. And make sure you subscribe as always. We're on the road. I've not said this yet because I don't like this YouTuber thing, but we're on the road to 20k. All right, I've said it. We're on the road to 20k. So getting to 20,000 subscribers when I've only really ran the channel for about 18 months properly, it's a massive, massive achievement. So thank you so much, and let's make sure we're hitting that subscribe button. But let's get into it anyway, guys. I wanted to speak to you about this topic in particular because, and what I will say straight off the bat is there has been a lot of this. And suddenly, people saying, people aren't saying this, but they are. It's on Instagram in particular. I've seen it when Rafinha's been putting posts up, and I've seen it on Twitter as well. If you search Rafinha's name followed by a swear word, you will get a lot of Leeds fans. You get other fans saying it, but Leeds fans who are sort of tainting Rafinha's name all of a sudden and saying his performances have been poor, this, that, and the other. Since he's come back from international duty, he's been a different player. And I wanted to sort of counteract that. I wanted to be the person who sticks up for the Brazilian. And the reason I'm saying this is because, listen, I'm going to call a spade a spade. If someone's been poor, I will call them out. You guys know that. I try to be as neutral as I can, even if I do have favourites for this Leeds United side. And I will give plaudits to certain individuals who I don't think are good enough for our standard, who have good performances for Leeds United. But Rafinha, for me, we've mentioned this several times. Without this guy, we would be bottom of the Premier League, in my humble opinion. Now, his assists, I've seen people say back to me, haven't been great this season. I believe he's got 3, but his goals and his goal contributions and how he sets up offensive actions by himself, draws 3 or 4 players in, makes space for another individual, is something that takes him to the top of the charts in terms of Leeds United's creative output. And what I think a lot of people need to not do is look at the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, where we have to be transparent here. Leeds were handed a massive slice of luck with regards to the sending off. I do believe it was a sending off, but until that point, Wolves were in complete control, because there's been a lot of revisionists at the minute saying, oh, well, Rafinha wasn't playing this game, so look what we can do without him. And just come on, everybody. Come on, that is just... It's not for me. It's not a logistical way of looking at it. You can counteract that and say, well, if Rafinha's playing, we win that game 5-2 instead of 3-2. So yeah, I don't think you can solely make that point. I think over a prolonged period of time, the longevity, the span of this guy being part of Leeds United, his assists, his goals, his overall contribution, his sprints, his endeavour, his stamina, everything, has been absolutely exceptional. And also his off the field work. He's off the field. He's always kept his nose clean. He's always been very good when it comes to off the field interviews, even in Brazil, about Leeds United and how he wants to stay at Leeds United. And I think there's been a lot of, can't say propaganda because maybe it is going to happen this summer, but there's been a lot of press. There's been a lot of paper talk from a certain individual in particular. When you're looking at Fabrizio Romano, discussing Rafinha all the time, and namely discussing Deco as well, Rafinha's agent. Now, this seems to have been a lightning rod for Leeds United fans to then criticise Rafinha and then link in his performances after the international break, where he's come back and apparently not being as good as he was previously. I think that's very, very narrow-minded, because I think press talk is press talk at the end of the day. People put out things for clicks. They put out things for interaction, for audience engagement. And that's exactly what's happening right now. I'm talking about it. You're talking about it. Everyone on social media is talking about it. People in the pubs of Leeds are talking about it. And yeah, that's exactly what journalists do. They put things out there for a bite, for a nibble. And it seems like Rafinha's getting a lot of flack for that, when he's been very, very articulate when it's come to Leeds United. He's been very, very respectful whenever he's come out and said anything about Leeds United. And ultimately, everybody, nothing's happened as of yet. It's just paper talk. It's just people talking on Twitter. And I think there's a lot of best player tax with Rafinha. He is the best player at the club. by a country mile in terms of ability. But what I do think as well is, as I've said at the start, he's dragged us out of the mud on more than one occasion this season, and without him, I really don't know where we'd be. I said at the start of the season that he would be our top assist maker. I said at the start of the season he would be our top scorer, because I wasn't fully convinced that we would see Patrick Bamford go through a full season injury free. Whereas when you look at Rafinha's track record, when he was at Rennes, when he was at Sporting Lisbon, his injury record's been very, very good. So when you look at that, you do think to yourself, when you're looking at the projection of the season, that this guy could be one of our top performers. Turns out I was right on that front. So yeah, for me, it was obvious from the start that Rafinha was going to be the star boy. We saw at the end of last season, he was contributing to so many goals. His goal contributions for the time period he was in England was only second to Bruno Fernandes in the country. So we are working with a world-class operator right now, an elite footballer. I've actually seen people on Twitter saying he's not elite and he's not in the Mahrez bracket. He's not in the whatever winger you want to discuss bracket. I've actually seen people saying he's not actually in the same bracket as some Leicester and Aston Villa wingers, which is absolute rubbish. Look at Rafinha's goals, look at his assists, look at his offensive creation, look at how good he is off the ball as well. Defensively, he's exquisite, and he's had nothing around him this year. He's had no striker to aim at. Our 18-goal striker has not been in the squad this season. He's played 6 games, started 6 games for Leeds United. You've had Dan James up front, who is not a striker. That has not worked at all. That's not helped Rafinha out. The entire back line and midfield has been switching around with injuries. Rafinha has been the constant for the majority of the season, and thank God he's been the constant for the majority of the season. So the best player tax is there. You expect more from your better players, but naturally you expect a little bit of a drop-off at some point. You know, this is a system under Marcelo Bielsa that we've been playing through for, you know, Rafinha, in his case, it's been 18 months to 2 years now. He's had to come to the Premier League. He's adapted to the Premier League extremely well, but he's also had to adapt to the Marcelo Bielsa system. He had a lot of critics at the start in terms of his defensive displays, which is he gets a lot of because he's the best defensive player. It's absolute rubbish. His sprints are unbelievable. His recovery rate is unbelievable. You know, his defensive work is as good as his attacking work, which is extremely rare for a winger. And when you look at the top clubs in Europe, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Manchester City, PSG, that is why this transfer for Rafinha has so many tick boxes, because Marcelo Bielsa improved his game the other way as well, which it has to be encompassed in every winger's play nowadays. So I think there is best player tax there, but I think throughout the majority of the season, I would say 95% of it, that best player tax has been rewarded. I would also say when you look at players like Riyad Mahrez, you look at maybe the Leicester campaign, but you look at other top wingers in this division, would they be able to consistently replicate by themselves in many instances the numbers that Rafinha has done in a relegation battle? Not surrounded by top class players, surrounded by a lot of championship players. Would any top player be able to replicate what Rafinha has done for Leeds United this season? I would say no. And that's why when people have been saying back to me on Twitter, he hasn't been superb. He has been superb because he's been the focal point for everything. Everything goes through him. He's the main player. And we're going to get into some of the specifics of it in just a little while. But yeah, international break, he's come back a different player. People seem to love this. I would say when you're looking over the campaign and when you're looking at how many games he's played, what have Leeds played? 29 games. He started 27 of those games. 27 of those games. I believe it's Southampton down at St Mary's, and obviously the last game at Wolves that he hasn't started all season. That's staggering. When you look at how many times he's been away with international duty, you know, the recovery rate from when he's come back from international duty and played for Leeds, no moaning. He just wanted to play, wants to play his football. There's a lot of people saying as well, he's trying to play to get a move. Well, what's that based on? That's just your synopsis from the event, which has no real meaning. It's just an opinion for me, which is formed by pure negativity on Rafinha. It's almost like, well, yeah, we want to have some sort of negative thought process on him, so we'll curate this, because there's no foundation to it. There's no evidence to it. It's not objective. So yeah, I think the 27 games that he's played just proves that Rafinha is in with the cause. Let's bear in mind as well, everybody, that after the team went to Wolves and won. He was on Instagram going absolutely nuts, absolutely nuts. So when I hear some of these things, I think, well, is he a team player? Of course he's a team player. Is his foot out the door? I don't think so. As we say, this is all based on paper talk, all based on what Fabrizio Romano says about Deco. Something might be happening in the background. But for me, Rafinha, and we're going to look at his recent performances where people seem to think he's been absolutely trite, but I would say something different. We're going to look at his performances and has he really been that bad? 27 games in this system. He's had a change of manager, which we're going to get onto in a little bit, a complete change of philosophy and how we play the style. I think he's been very harshly treated. I think we saw towards the back end of it, he was struggling with the Bielsa way because I think he was frustrated because he seemed to be the player who was cultivating a lot of the chances, a lot of the actions, but players across the pitch, you're going to lump Jack Harrison in there, you're going to lump Dan James in there, you're going to lump Matthias Klick in there, you're going to lump any of our offensive players going forward into that category of struggling to do anything without Rafinha. So I think he got massively frustrated with everything that was going on under Bielsa because nothing was changed. I also think you've got to bring that back to a separate point, which I'm going to look at a little bit later on when it comes to the transfer window. But his fitness, his running, his sprints are still top of the charts. How much he's running per game, still top of the charts. So when we talk about Leeds fans and wanting every player to die on the pitch, and that's accepted with some players, as long as you work hard on the pitch for Leeds United, then we'll all accept you. Well, it seems like when there's been some paper talk around one of our key players, that's not been taken into consideration. I know a lot of people will rebuttal this and say, I've seen nothing on Twitter. I've seen nothing on Twitter. I've seen nothing on Instagram, this, that, and the other. Well, I have seen stuff on Instagram and Twitter. A lot of people have been linking me stuff, which certain individuals are saying, it's all over Facebook. Rafinha, we'd be happy to get rid of him, this, that, and the other. So it is out there, everybody. It just takes a simple search. Just because it's not on your timeline from your followers doesn't mean it's not out there. So I think let's have a look at some of the games where everyone's been saying he's been very poor. I think this is key to note, to be quite honest with you. We'll just take that little overlay off there. So for me, you look at the time where he came back from the international duty. As you can see here, I'm sure you guys can. We'll just zoom in there. So yeah, when we're looking at the time where he came back from the Ecuador and the Brazil-Paraguay game, which he was superb in. He came back in the Aston Villa game. For me, he wasn't great. And this is one of the games where I look at and I think, all right, Raf, you were not good that game. But, you have got that, once again, excuse, but it's a very valid excuse. He's on the other side of the world playing two very intense games in the World Cup qualifying. He's come back and he's been thrown into an Aston Villa game. It is a week later, of course it is, but you have got to have that caveat when a player does come back from international duty. I will say that. But yeah, don't get me wrong, he was poor in that game. I thought Luca Dean did a really good job on him. And then we moved to the Everton game. Now, the Everton game, for me, he was nowhere near the worst player at all, but naturally you're going to get a lot of people saying he's the worst player because, like we've said, everybody, it's the big player tax. This is everything that happens when it comes down to a big player not turning up for a game. It's his fault that we lost the game. It's his fault that he hasn't scored 3 goals. It's his fault this, that, and the other. When you look at that game, it was a diabolical team performance, and this is something that not a lot of people take into account as well. It's not just on Rafinha, it's on all the players around him. And bear in mind that what we've said throughout the entire season, this team isn't good enough, and it needs a refresh next year with 4, 5, 6 players. Some individuals are saying, i.e. me. But there has to be world-class talent spread around this guy, and there wasn't. And if you look in the Everton game as well, it was under the Bielsa period where maybe Rodrigo wasn't being able to wasn't flourishing with that defensive duty that he had to do every single game. And when Rafinha plays with Rodrigo, those two have a real synergy between them. Now, when you look at the Manchester United game, this is a game where you turn around and think, and this look, the Rodrigo chat here, where his performance was decent and then Rafinha's performance was decent. He came on for 45 minutes and was arguably the best player in the game. Should have started the game, and maybe that could have been a little bit more of a different affair. So I think you're looking at straight away, these 3 games here, I think 2 out of 3 of them, one being very, very good, one average and one below average. So you've got him maybe underperforming in one game there. The Liverpool game, I'm not even going to take into account because it was a one-sided spanking. I don't think any player touched the ball. So every single player was poor there, 100%. But I don't think you can look at Rafinha there and say he was the standout poor player. Tottenham, I thought he was decent. Once again, he hit the bar. His average rating was decent. We've just got this Leicester graphic up here, guys. So I'm just going to touch on this in a second. But yeah, his output was very good. If you just look at some of the statistics of the match as well, 6.8. There we go. Obviously, he was very, very good during the game. Accurate passes, 31 out of 46. Crosses, 6 crosses. Long balls, those spreaded long balls, accurate was 2. Ground duels, 5 out of 11. So overall, it was a half decent performance from Rafinha, not poor at all, as I say here. Now, this is where it changes a little bit, and this is what I want to discuss just prior getting into it, really. Now, when a new manager comes in who naturally has a narrower style of play. We all know this. We've all agreed to this when it comes to Jesse Marsch, a narrower style of play. And you saw that straight off the bat, really, when we were playing Leicester. There was the Bielsa-isms in there. You saw the Junior Firpo overlaps. You still saw Jack Harrison getting a lot of joy. So it was an encouraged Marcelo Bielsa performance, really, with a little bit of Jesse Marsch-isms. But you could tell straight away Luke Ayling was playing centrally. Matthias Klipp was trying to pick the ball up centrally and play through centrally to Dan James. That's what we were trying to do. So you've got an entirely different system here for a winger. A winger, by the way, who probably isn't going to be here next year and isn't going to be replaced by another winger. He's going to be replaced by a central attacking midfielder because it's a 4-2-2-2 system, compact and narrow. So why would we be replacing Rafinha with another winger? It would make zero sense. He's getting replaced, if he does go, by Brendan Aronson or John Swift or someone of the like. So that just shows how the style of football is going to completely change, especially in the new season, when Jesse Marsch gets his ideas out there. And that's why wingers are naturally going to suffer. So Rafinha in these 2 games, as you can see here, you guys might think I'm making excuses here, but obviously this is when Bielsa was sacked. Leeds were playing a little bit more out wide, although I didn't think there was a real style of play. It just seemed gung-ho and give the ball to Rafinha, which I think is another unfair stick he gets. But when you look at the Leicester game here, we're just going to look at the lineups here, and we're just going to look at the Leeds United style of it. Now, the reason I want to touch on the Leeds United style of it is you can see Rafinha's had a poor game. We all knew Jack Harrison was much better than him on that game, but you look at where he is touching the ball, right? In a Jesse Marsch system, right, where it's all about being narrow, it's all about getting the ball and playing centrally. Rafinha was hugging the touchline because that's what he's done his entire career, whereas everything, as you can see here, comes centrally, and that's why he wasn't getting enough of the ball. He played 90 minutes in the game, but he barely got a touch, and this is what I'm trying to say. I mean, he had a decent effort, we know, in that game. He had a decent couple of crosses as well, but once again, if Rafinha gets an assist in that game, we're all talking about him being absolutely this, that, and the other. He's really taken to the Jesse Marsch system. And overall, you have to say this season, Leeds' finishes have been absolutely appalling, aside from Rafinha. But he's playing in a much, much narrower system. And we're going to see this effect here with the Aston Villa game, which was an appalling performance, all ends up. This wasn't just Rafinha, but Rafinha was obviously getting pelters for it because he's the best player. But once again, look at the heat map, everybody. We're playing a narrow system, and he wants the ball out wide. He is a winger, so he is going to suffer in this system. It's obvious. It's so obvious. Look, only 69 touches when normally Rafinha's touch map is through the roof. Right. And then we look at the last game, Norwich. Now, what is really interesting about this when we look at Rafinha and why did he have that? Now look at the difference in the heat map. He's clearly either been instructed or he's taken it upon himself to start coming way, way more centrally. Sorry, I can't zoom in there. Way, way more centrally. Very, very different to the other heat map, which we've just seen. Took it upon himself to be central. Leeds playing more compact, and that's where he got more joy. And this is what I just don't understand, because there has obviously been a tiny bit of a drop off when it comes to him in the last couple of games. But you've got to look at the overall impact of what's gone on, the structure of the club, the new manager, everything encompassed with that. And just obviously a little bit before that, having a little bit of a dip in his performances. That happens, and it's accepted with every other footballer, aside from Rafinha, which is what really, really annoys me. And it's been a team drop-off. There's so much reliance on him that even when the team drops off, there is more of a lightning rod when it comes to Rafinha. I also think he was hugely, hugely frustrated by the lack of business in the winter window. I would genuinely believe, and this is maybe me being a little bit naive, I think Rafinha would be way more open to staying with Leeds United if he knew what we were able to do. What you know, show him a little bit of ambition in the winter. And I think that's what the club didn't do. And I think that's why the club have ultimately suffered. But I think as well, what a lot of people don't take into consideration is how the players suffer on the back of that, the mental side. Because then you're almost saying, right, okay, well, it's up to Marcelo Bielsa now. He's given 26 days, then he's sacked. And there's so many different compartments that are going on here now. So Rafinha's probably thinking, hold on, they've not brought anyone in when we need to get out of this mess now. They're purely relying on me and the manager. And they've sacked the manager after 26 days. So now it's even more on my shoulders. So I just think there's so many psychological points to this one, guys. I don't think there's been a drop-off, to be quite honest with you. I think there are footballing reasons why Rafinha has if he has dipped off a little bit. But overall, for me, you're looking at maybe the Aston Villa 3-3. You're looking at the Leicester 1-0. Aside from that, they've been good or just above average performances from Rafinha when you're basing it on ratings, when you're basing it on output. It's the exact same. And when you're looking at the last game at Norwich, that one of the most key games Leeds have had in the recent history at Ellen Road, he's arguably man of the match. So, yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. I wanted to do this because I wanted to talk on it. I think there's just been a lot of unfair stick towards him. And if you haven't seen it, fair play. You haven't seen it, but I have seen it. Hence why I've come on here and done a video. Let me know if you agree, disagree, like, dislike, all this sort of stuff, guys. And I will catch you probably tomorrow